soir avec nous pour une projection exceptionnelle, évidemment, Alita Battle Angel. Et bien sûr, comme les producteurs, c'est bien connu, sont là avant tout le monde. Eh bien, ce soir, ce grand producteur oscarisé, bien sûr, dont Titanic ne fait pas exception, il est là avant ses équipes pour vous parler tout de suite à vous qui êtes là. Mesdames et messieurs, je vous demande d'accueillir un immense producteur, le producteur évidemment de Alita ce soir, John Landau. Alors, bien sûr, c'est... Voilà. John, as I said, producers always come first. So...
I think producers always come last, which is the way it should be. We're here, I'm here, lucky enough to be here because I stand on the shoulders of so many others. I think, what you saw tonight is a result of an incredible team of people that we're lucky enough to have who worked on Alita to create what I believe is a truly unique cinematic experience.
Merci John. Alors, vous avez tous, pour vous qui n'êtes pas, certains ne sont peut-être pas totalement bilingues, vous savez que cette rencontre se fait exclusivement en anglais. Donc, pour certains, vous avez bien sûr les traductions à l'oreille. Thank you, John. Please sit wherever you want. This is your turf tonight, almost. Well, John, first of all, thank you very much for being with us. I mean, we know you set the bar pretty high when you produce a film. Small films, Titanic, Avatar. We're now even producing its sequels, its many sequels, so thank you for being here. I mean, basically, the first question that really, comes to mind, so to speak, but what did you find so exciting, but also so challenging about producing this passion film that had inhabited James Cameron's brains for so many years?
Well, Jim Cameron and I first learned of Alita through our friend Guillermo del Toro. Guillermo introduced us to Alita in 1999. Jim, at the time, was a parent of a young teenage daughter. I was a parent of two teenage boys, or young boys. And we just saw in Alita a character that could be inspirational for youth everywhere, no matter what the gender is. A story of an innocent girl who comes into the world, and you heard it tonight where she says, I'm just an insignificant girl. How many of us at some point in our lives have thought of ourselves as insignificant? But she goes on to discover that inside of her is the ability to become a hero. And we thought that was a great message for the next generation, that inside of each one of us is that ability.
Well, as he's not here yet, so we can talk about him. I mean, it would be delicate others maybe to do so before, but what made you think, after all these years, and as it was supposed to always be a James Cameron's film, what made you pick, of all directors, you could have had any director, what made you pick Robert Rodriguez?
So that happened very fortuitously at a social lunch that Jim and Robert had. And Jim was telling Robert about the 4 Avatar sequels we're making and how long that's going to be. And Robert said to Jim, well, if that's the case, what happens to movies like Alita? And it was at the end of a 3-hour lunch. And Jim said, you have 15 more minutes. And Robert said, sure. And Jim showed him an art reel that we had created in 2005. That was a short version of the movie. And Robert fell in love with it. Jim gave him a script that Jim had written. It was too long. It was 186 pages. And gave him 600 pages of notes. And he said to Robert, if you can crack this, you can direct the movie. And Robert brought us back 4 months later, the script, and we didn't miss anything. All of the heart that Jim had written in the script, all the character work was still there. And that told us that Robert saw the movie the same way we did, and we felt that we could partner with him to parent our child, Alita, together.
Well, let's now welcome the man we just talked about, the director behind, not at all, but many things, Robert Rodriguez. He's here tonight with us as well, director of Alita Battle Angel And what a job he did. Please come and meet us. We were just talking about you, but we didn't want you to blush too much. Thank you, Robert, for being with us tonight, really. Well, you sit next to your producer, for instance, and of course they're here with us tonight as well. Christoph Waltz, good to see. Dr. Bryson, Hugo, Christoph Waltz, qui nous fait également l'honneur d'être avec nous ce soir à Paris. Christophe, et bien sûr, celle qui incarne Alita, que vous venez de découvrir ce soir, Rosa Salazar, qui est une incroyable Alita. This lady gave Alita a life of her own. Thank you so much also for making the trip to Paris. On high heels too, you're brave. Welcome. Bonsoir. Well, we were discussing earlier with John, how it all came about a little bit for you, Robert, to step into the project, and we were talking about the challenges, but personally, your challenges, whether creatively, technically, or even the thought of stepping into James Cameron's shoes, what was you the most exciting or the most daunting challenges facing you?
Everything you mentioned was definitely on my mind. It was exciting, daunting, challenging. But I always believe that, when you are faced with a challenge that feels like it's beyond your capabilities, and you're on the right track, because it's going to take you to a different place. So I was eager to try my hand in trying to make something on the level that Jim usually does, and John, these big movies that appeal to people all over the world because it has a really great central message and characters and stories that has a great mix of truth and spectacle, because the spectacle is why you go to the movies, but really the heart of the film is so strong in their films. I wanted to learn how to do that, and I knew with someone like Jim Cameron as a mentor and John as a producer that we could that I could get much closer to accomplishing that with them than on my own, for sure.
Well, you were always, a big fan of Yukito Kishiro's work. But I'm turning now to your actors, and I was wondering what Rosa, what Christoph, what inspired you most about the project? How did you make these iconic characters your own? What did you tap into to be these characters? Rosa, ladies first.
Oh, thank you. Well, I love the script. The script was beautiful. And I love the story of Alita. I love the fact that in the beginning of the story, she is someone who feels quite insignificant. And by going on a journey inward, she discovers that she's not insignificant at all, that she actually is quite extraordinary and has the ability to change her life and possibly the lives of many, many, many others. So I like that. That inspired me.
What about you? How did you get in a way into the Dr. Dyson character? How did you make it your own? What inspired you about him?
I don't know. But what's inspiring about this whole thing is it's a big story with so many aspects, so many details. They all ring true. They all drive the story. They all happen. They all energize the story, energize you as a viewer, and therefore, why should I exclude my little self?
But I think the incredible thing that Christoph does, and I'll say this with him in the room, he grounds the story in a reality. Here we have an Alita character that we've used computer-generated effects to create her performance, but Christoph, grounds this movie in a reality that is relatable. We've all either been on one side or the other, or both sides of parenthood, and he represents a very relatable character with this second chance at fatherhood.
Évidemment, ceci est votre rencontre. Les questions sont à vous. N'hésitez pas, des micros passent. Please have your questions ready. Or I can go on. Any, because I can't see you well. Yes, please, a question there.
Bonjour, alors super film, et j'avais une question surtout par rapport au manga. Est-ce que, alors en fait, c'était au niveau déjà du choix du nom. J'ai été un peu étonné que elle s'appelle Alita et non Gali comme dans le manga. Et le deuxième choix que j'ai trouvé étonnant mais intéressant, c'était le fait que vous parliez qu'elle devienne une héros en fait, une héroïne. Et dans le manga, c'était vraiment centré sur le fait qu'une cyborg est plus humaine que certains humains en fait. Et je voudrais, voilà, c'est ma question au final. Pourquoi ce choix?
Well, it's a question really about, going back to the manga, so to speak. You make two choices that seem, in a way, to differ slightly from the manga. One is Alita. In the original, she was called Gal. Now, you also said that, in the film, she really turns into a heroine. She becomes the hero. In the manga, it's more what's said is that some cyborgs, in a way, are more human than humans.
Look, I'll just start, by addressing that. We've talked, the three of us, we were just doing some stuff. This is a movie about what does it mean if you're human? Do you need a physical body that's human? Do you need, a heart? Do you need a brain? Do you have a soul? It's a consciousness. And I think, we held true to what Kishiro created. And one of my big thrills just happened, 2 days ago when I flew to Tokyo before coming to Paris, and I screened the movie for Kishiro. And his reaction to it was that he said to me, "You lived up to the promise of staying true to my work, not doing the Hollywood version, but doing the cinematic version." And that was one of the big thrills for me.
Question. Là-bas, s'il vous plaît. N'hésitez pas à
Bonsoir.
If you want to stand up.
Oui, bonsoir. J'avais une question concernant l'embargo qu'il y a eu sur les critiques. Est-ce que la production est au courant et le réalisateur? Qu'est-ce que vous en pensez? Et qu'est-ce que vous en dites? Est-ce que c'est qu'en France ou c'est ailleurs aussi?
Well, it seems there was an embargo on critics. Is it something that is usually done, or is it only done in France? Or what do you think about this, giving critics an embargo date?
I think every movie has an embargo date, and ours internationally is established with when we do our world premiere later this week in London on the 31st. And it's not unusual, it's something standard, and it comes from the studios, just so everything drops at the same time. The way the cycles work, we'll oftentimes screen for one critic 2 weeks early, another critic a week later, and if they're just dropping their reviews randomly, it's not beneficial for anybody.
Avoiding spoilers too. Question here. Please stand up.
Oui, bonsoir. Juste une question à propos du méchant qu'on voit de manière très rapide. Il ressemble à un réalisateur connu qui a réalisé notamment Titanic et Avatar. Je voulais savoir si c'était fait exprès et ce que ça signifiait en fait.
It seems there is a villain who briefly appears in your picture that seems to have the face of a certain director who did, Titanic, Avatar. Was it just an impression of this gentleman, or did you actually do a villain with James' face and body?
So you're talking, yeah, so you mean the Ed Norton character? No, that's just Ed Norton. He just happens to look uncannily good.
But it also, if you're familiar with the manga, the whole design of the Nova character had that sort of hair and everything that people think of with Jim. Jim now has very short hair, but the sphere, I could see people, thinking that.
All right, question here, please. Can you stand up?
Bonsoir. Alors moi j'ai une question pour Rosa. Les scènes de combat, est-ce que c'était vous? Est-ce que vous avez suivi un entraînement spécial pour ces scènes qui, by the way, sont sublimes?
Well, it's a question for you, Rosa. I mean, it's about the combat scenes, which, by the way, are terrific. I mean, what kind of training, if any, you had to go through to be that on screen?
I did 5 months of exhaustive martial arts training. It was pure agony. I did a mélange of martial arts. We did some Muay Thai, we did some staff fighting, some eagle claw, some kickboxing to get my endurance up. I didn't want to do 2 kicks and then be winded for the rest of the day. It was arduous because in the process, some days you go in and you are making progress and you feel really powerful and cool, and then the next day you go in and you're absolute shit. And I was faced with my limitations almost every day, but I pushed through them, and so what the effect of that was, I was not only training my body for Alita, I was also training my mind almost by accident. So yes, it was an uphill battle. For me, I'm small and I'm fit and I'm active, but it takes a lifetime to accomplish some of those moves. So,
you know, we accomplished Rosa's character through performance capture. And I've heard Rosa talk about that process from her perspective, how it was not cumbersome, that it ultimately freed her up. I've never asked you, Christoph, playing scenes opposite someone who is not in a costume, is not dressed in the period. What was that like for you as an actor playing opposite? Did it change anything?
Nothing whatsoever. It's always Rosa.
Answer. Always
did you get your answer?
I got my answer.
He's hijacking your Q&A. So.
That's all right. You
Used
can
to
do
it.
anything you want. Question là-bas.
Bonsoir. Alors, tout d'abord, merci beaucoup pour ce film que j'ai trouvé absolument formidable. Donc, vous avez adapté un manga, mais finalement, on trouve aucun accent nippon dans ce film. Vous n'avez pas utilisé les influences cyberpunk du manga. Vous êtes plutôt allé vers des influences latino, avec une ville à Atlantic City qui ressemble un peu à Cuba ou à des villes mexicaines. Et en fait, j'aurais aimé savoir pourquoi vous avez préféré privilégier cette ambiance latino à une ambiance un peu plus japonisante qui aurait été un peu plus un hommage au manga. Voilà.
Well, thank you so much first for a terrific film. The lady was wondering, obviously, it's adapted from the manga, but in Alita, I mean, there's really no cyberpunk or Japanese really manga, hints at. It's more like a Latin American feel flavor. I mean, why? Why give it this vibe? Why not go more into the homage to the Japanese type of manga? I see you nodding, Robert, so you're answering that question.
Well, what's great, what we really loved and what Jim responded to in the material was that Kishiro didn't write a graphic novel that was Asian-centric. It was a melting pot society. Originally, it takes place more like in Kansas City. It was actually Jim that realized scientifically it would need to be closer to the equator to have a space elevator work. So he had picked, before I came aboard, somewhere more like Panama City, which I thought would give it a much, very different feel than the usual dystopian futures we see. It would be a warmer look. It would feel more like a melting pot. It's one of the last cities that survives, so everyone goes there. And that's what really freed us up to make something that was just more universal and told a bigger story.
And you put our own city within your own lot. That must
We
be
built the actual set, yeah, in my parking lot. It's still there. You can come visit.
It needs to be said that his parking lot used to be the parking lot of an airport.
Small detail that explains a bit the square footage available. Next question, over here.
J'ai une question. Pourquoi dans le film Alita, elle a des gros yeux?
Why does Lita have big eyes in your film?
And it was something that I saw in Jim's original designs. That when he was going to make this in 2005, he showed me not only the script, but the original art paintings what he thought the movie would look like. And the very first image I saw was her looking at her arms with the scroll work, the porcelain sort of body, and she had the larger manga eyes. And I thought, oh wow, he's gonna go for a totally CG character. It really pays homage to the original character. You know, we've been seeing manga characters since Astro Boy in the 30s, but we've never seen one photoreal. And everything Jim does is always something you've never seen before, whether it's the water pod in Abyss or the T-1000 in Terminator 2, or the Titanic sinking, or the Avatar world. And that was going to be his in for this, was to create a character, photoreal, that you'd never seen before. So I knew we had to do that. It was the bolder way to go. And if the eyes are the window to the soul, we needed a character who was going to be very soulful, so that even in a wide shot, you can see everything that's emoting through her eyes. And she's a cyborg, so it would make sense that she could have a different look than a normal human. And it's what causes this alienation, and she thinks it makes her more of an outsider to others because she doesn't look like everyone else. So it was all really great for the message of the film. It worked really well.
Question là-bas.
Hello, right here.
Bonjour.
I just have a question for Robert Rodriguez and John Landau. Why did you choose Christoph Waltz as the father figure? And for Christoph, how did you do to portray that father figure with such a character as Alita?
Why did we pick Chris? Christoph was my first and only choice for the role. We had like 3-hour first meeting where we talked about our children, our daughters, and you could just feel a very warm fatherly figure about it, but yet you could have the edge of being a hunter warrior. You needed to have both sides. You couldn't have somebody that was either too dark or too light, and Christoph can do anything. And we had such a great meeting that I knew that he was the guy. And it brings just such gravitas to the whole project that it really set the bar early of what we were going to be going for. And I never could imagine anyone else, and of course now that we've done it, I can't imagine anyone ever playing it. But that's why I chose him, was really for who he was as a person first, to kind of pick people for who they are, and then of course for his artistry and for his craft. Thank you.
Look, I look for story. What's the story? And then I think about what I can contribute. And after talking to Robert, and after talking to John, and after talking to Jim, after meeting Rosa, I thought I can contribute something. And if you have a story you like, a place in it, and the people you really desire to work with, there it is, no decision necessary.
Question là-bas.
Est-ce que vous avez prévu la sortie d'un Alita 2?
Well, is Alita 2 in the works in the future?
Well, I think that audiences are going to have to tell us if they want a Alita 2. Kishiro created this vast world with many, many stories. We really only pulled from the first 3 and a little bit of the 4th, what is now 33, graphic novels. So if audiences, tell us, I know Jim would love to go back there. I know Robert, I think Rosa, Christoph, we would all love, because these are movies that have a theme that is bigger than their genre. The theme is what you leave the theater with, the plot you leave at the theater. And we would love to tell movies where we touch people and they're affected by the cinema experience.
And the third one is called Ido, not Alita anymore.
Jim and you have been talking?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have the idea of the plot? No. All right, I was talking about the Ito, of course, film. There's the third one, of course. Question?
Bonsoir, merci beaucoup pour ce film. J'ai une question concernant les effets spéciaux. J'ai trouvé qu'il y avait une certaine, un certain pas contrairement à Alita, c'est-à-dire que je veux savoir si vous avez rencontré donc, dans la production des problèmes dans les effets spéciaux ou des nouveaux conflits ou dans le jeu d'acteur, s'il y a eu une certaine évolution, s'il y a eu si c'était compliqué ou pas dans le jeu d'un des acteurs, ou bien j'ai du mal. Oui, excusez-moi.
Ce que vous voulez dire, c'est est-ce que les effets spéciaux, de quelle manière peut-être ont-ils influencé le jeu des acteurs?
Voilà, et dans la réalisation.
D'accord. To what extent, if any, special effects, I mean, play a part into the directing, into the acting itself, maybe into the producing?
Well, I mean, the special effects, we try to, I learned something from Jim on this movie. When I make movies, usually they tend to be very whimsical because I'm a cartoonist background. If I have a character put a guitar case on his shoulder and fire a missile, I don't think the audience really needs to know how it works. They can just kind of go with it. It's just dream imagery to me. But that doesn't fly with Jim. He would say, how does that fire? How does that reload? How did you engineer that? I don't believe it. It pulls me out of the movie. I don't buy it. So I realized that with him, he has a different approach to movies. When I asked him, he said, well, I believe science fiction and fantasy especially need to be really grounded, be utterly real, otherwise you won't buy the fantasy. So I knew I had to take a completely different approach to it and not even rely so much on special effects. I thought, I'm not going to do like what I did in Sin City and shoot it on a green screen. I'm going to actually build real sets, have real locations, have real actors around Rosa, she'll really bite out of a real orange, things like that, so that it would be very true to reality. So when they replaced her with CG, they would have to match the reality around her. So the effects were used to just really kind of solidify a reality so that you buy it and believe it more than just having effects for effect's sake. So that approach really dictated how we would shoot the movie than I probably normally would have thought for something like this.
Rosa, why don't you talk about, for you as an actress, doing a performance capture performance?
Well, it might disappoint you, but it was no different from working in a practical sense. Yes, I'm wearing a contraption, wetsuit type of outfit with mic packs and radios and fans and batteries strapped to my helmet and my body, but it didn't encumber me much, to be honest. They made a promise to me that it would be my performance up there, and the way that they would achieve that is for me to just give a grounded, organic performance. So all of that stuff was almost eliminated. They put us in an environment where we could play. We had the city, 97,000 square feet of actual practical city. So I think we spent 3 days on a green screen, which is really nothing for a movie of this kind. What it was like for me was actually quite freeing because it neutralized me in order to create something new. All of the other bodily discomforts sort of went away, and I was able to just do what I always do, dressed as a spaceman.
Hello. First of all, thanks for the movie. Question from Mr. Rodriguez. It's often said that movies made 3 times. First the writing, then the shooting, and finally the editing. What can you tell us about the editing? What's not in the movie? The deleted scenes, deleted subplots, these kind of things, and do you expect an extended cut later on release, these kind of things? Or Mr. Landau, talking about the director's cut. When your pal James can take his nose outside of the avatar base for 2 seconds, we're still waiting for a decent high definition release from the Abyss and True Lies.
I know.
We're working on those, but back to Robert's question.
I want those myself. Yeah, part of me weaseling my way into the company was to try and get my hands on those master copies.
Absolutely.
I'm actually trying to get them to do a commentary. I haven't told you that. Part of my conspiracy plot.
What about the editing?
The editing, it was pretty lean. I mean, Jim's original script, I did most of the editing before we shot, because Jim had a long script. It was 186 pages, which means it would be 186 minutes. instead of 120. And I knew that wouldn't fly with the studio or anybody, so I had to do a lot of editing. And so we ended up really not cutting anything out of the actual movie. There was one scene, there were some scenes that we truncated, but there's only one scene that we took out because we just didn't need it, where Hugo was helping her train. It was after she did the first motorball test, and when after she was in the alley fight and realized she could trigger a memory through combat. So he was trying to get her to whack some things on the skates, and she almost gets a flash, but she doesn't, and she realizes it has to be a life or death situation. We just ended up using that line as a line of dialogue later instead, and not using the whole scene, just to keep it. I wanted to keep it pretty tight, because that's just felt like the pace of it. I think that was it. Really, there was nothing. I wouldn't include it on the Blu-ray or anything because we'd have to go do all the visual effects for it. We cut it really early, and it was the first day of shooting it, so we were just kind of getting our bearings, and it was not an essential scene, so it was a good scene to start with.
I'm sorry, but we haven't mentioned a scene that, to me anyway, was absolutely mind-blowing, is when Alita, so let's talk about love, shall we, literally offers her heart, which I thought was absolutely amazing. And we haven't talked yet about, you just mentioned Hugo, but we haven't really talked about the other heart of the film, right, which is literally a love story. How did you, I mean, it is a love story on many levels. It's also about our differences, isn't it? And how love, basically, whether it's human or cyborg, is love.
For Jim Cameron, the scene where she says, "I will give you my heart," that was such a focus to him in the writing of the script that it all revolved around that for him as he developed this story out. So, again, it's metaphorically, it means so much, and I think, science fiction is a great opportunity to be a metaphor for the world in which we live. Whether it's the "I give you my heart," or whether it's falling in love with somebody that you've looked down upon, their type of people, or whether it's finding yourself in the world. That's what we do with cinema, and science fiction allows us to do that in a unique way.
Even Iron City is a metaphor for many places nowadays that we feel dumped into, right? I see no love, right?
Absolutely.
Question.
J'avais une question. Oui. J'aurais voulu savoir, les films adaptés de manga, de jeux vidéo, en règle générale, ça fonctionne pas très bien au box-office ou au niveau de la critique. Est-ce que vous avez une sorte de pression par rapport à ça?
Well, I mean, films adapted from mangas or video games have not known to be really great box office hits. Was there any pressure or anything that was attached to that knowledge or field?
I didn't know the manga that well before, because when I first heard about this project, it was back in 2000, I saw an announcement that Jim was going to make this his next movie. And it had a picture of Jim, and it had a picture of Alita from the manga. So I thought, I can see why he would want to do that, because it's, a really strong female protagonist, a cyborg, it's a future, it's all the stuff Jim loves. And I purposely stayed away from the manga because I didn't want to. It said it was his next movie, so I thought it was going to come out in a couple of years. So I thought, I don't want to spoil the story and know what's going to happen. So I stayed away from it. So my first exposure to the story was actually reading Jim's script, not the manga. I actually read his script first and thought it was just fantastic. And then I went and read the manga and saw how he took the manga and he really crafted a very cinematic story that could play to the whole world. So it didn't feel, it wasn't like with Sin City where I was going and taking each page and just making it move, where I was truly just translating it, not even adapting it. I was just making that move on screen. This was really a translation that he did, an adaptation that he did, where he took the essence of the manga, but created a whole much more, even the creator saw it and was surprised by how much heart and emotion that it had. It went way beyond what was in the manga. So we felt that we had something really special. It didn't rely on people's pre-knowledge of the manga or having to stay super true to every frame of it, like I had done religiously on the other picture.
Dernière question. with micro.
Good evening. I got a question from Mr. Rodriguez again. Sorry, guys. In your movie, we can recognize a lot of references to other blockbusters like Transformers, Pacific Rim, or Ghost in the Shell. So my question is, what were your influences? What movies and what artworks inspired you in the making of this movie?
Really, it was just the original art of Kishiro, and you know, sometimes people say, "Hey, were you inspired by Rollerball?" I was like, "Well, no, Kishiro might have been, because that was actually Motorball was in his original manga graphic novel." So sometimes artists tend to, you know, pastiche different influences that they have, and so if it's in the movie, it's because it came secondhand from the original source material, or we really, you know, went by the design. Even is very reality based. Like for me, when we're designing like her shoulder that's under her shirt most of the time, for me it doesn't really matter if it really connects correctly. But Jim is very different. He's very much, things have to really look like they would work, or he doesn't buy it. He would say, "Let me see that. Let me see what's right here. No, that wouldn't move forward like that. You have to redo that." He would tell the guys to re-engineer it and redesign it so that it could actually work. So that really informed a lot of the design more than any other movies. It was really based more on reality than on fiction.
It's the old thing. Form follows function.
So true. Merci beaucoup.